No one knew the new maid was the billionaire's mother. Until the secret came out. Mariana Collins, a woman marked by a past of sacrifices and silent struggles, decides to disguise herself as a maid to find out whether her son's wife, Victoria, is by his side out of true love or just for his money. In the heart of Los Angeles, among luxurious mansions and judgmental stares, this decision sets the stage for uncovered secrets, old wounds exposed, and choices that could forever change the family's fate. As masks begin to fall, each character is faced with their own fears and scars. What begins as a simple loyalty test becomes a story filled with betrayal, courage, and resilience. And in the middle of this whirlwind of emotions, a real chance for redemption and an unexpected fresh start is born. Before we dive into this emotional story, I want to invite you to leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. I love seeing how far our stories reach, and if you're into intense love stories full of twists and comebacks, make sure to subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss a single chapter, and you'll help this project grow even more. Now, let's dive into this story that's sure to touch your heart. Night falls over Los Angeles like a blanket of neon. From the high rooftops of West Hollywood, the lights stretch out like cold jewels. On the top floor of a mirrored building, the Collins apartment breathes luxury. Italian marble in the entryways, a grand piano sitting silent in the living room, contemporary artworks that seem to watch every step. The scent of polished wood mixes with jasmine from a tall vase by the panoramic window. Mariana Collins, 52, dark brown skin, short, natural curly hair, stands there in a maid's uniform, neutral fabric, spotless apron, fine gloves. There's elegance in the way she moves, shoulders straight, eyes alert, but discreet. No one would guess, seeing her with a cleaning bucket and a cloth in hand, that this woman is the mother of a billionaire. She takes a deep breath and practices silence, a silence that listens. From the hallway just a few feet away, the voices of Victoria Hayes and Daniel Collins rise and fall like waves. Victoria, 28, light-skinned, straight blonde hair in a modern cut framing her face, stands in front of a quartz countertop. Her blue eyes shine with wounded pride and exhaustion. Daniel, 33, tall, athletic, wearing a tailored dark suit, grips his phone with knuckles tense from pressure. The whole city seems to hold its breath with them. "You think I don't feel the weight of all this," Victoria says, her voice lower than her emotions allow. "The invitations, the dinners, the interviews, the way they look at me to measure whether I'm good enough for your last name." "It's not about my last name," Daniel replies, his tone controlled, signaling a storm. "It's about protecting the company, the legacy, our image. Some things can't fall apart." "I'm a thing now?" she asks, gripping the edge of the counter like she's holding onto the ground itself. Mariana moves closer, seemingly focused on straightening pillows and wiping an already spotless surface. The reflection in the window shows her calm face. Behind the serenity, a heart that knows the cracks luxury hides. She picks up every fracture in their voices, every broken breath. "I try kunpo, Daniel," Victoria goes on, eyes welling up. "But there are days I wake up and feel like I'm playing a role we never rehearsed. Smiling at gala dinners, keeping up conversations with investors, taking photos with the perfect family. And when I mess up, the whole world falls apart." "This isn't a stage," he says, turning his eyes to the city, as if the lights might offer answers. "It's our life, and our life requires discipline." The word discipline hangs in the air, cold. Mariana has seen that word turn into a knife. In neighborhood markets, in elite social circles, at tables where the fate of hundreds of workers is decided. Discipline, victory, or punishment. "I love you," Victoria murmurs, and her voice cracks. but sometimes I don't recognize myself next to you." Daniel moves, places his phone on the counter, and rubs his eyes. The CEO posture slips an inch. "I'm tired too. Vic. My mother. The shareholders. The board. They all want something. I'm trying to hold everything together." Victoria opens a drawer and pulls out a tissue. She breathes again, her hand trembling. Mariana sees the shaking, a tiny detail that reveals an inner earthquake. The young woman dabs her eyes and tries to hide it. "Sorry," she says, turning to the window so that if tears fall, they fall unseen. "No need to apologize," Daniel says, barely audible. "Just don't give up on me." "I haven't given up," she replies, and the word not yet spoken weighs as much as those that were. "I just need to feel that I can exist here without asking permission." A crystal glass nearly slips as Victoria reaches for a water bottle. Mariana steps quickly, silently, catching it before it hits the floor. She places it back with precision, like returning a heart to a chest. "Would you like some cold water, ma'am?" she asks gently. Victoria jumps slightly. She hadn't realized Mariana was so close. "Thank you." "Yes, please." Her voice is a little softer, more human. "No lemon?" Mariana asks, glancing sideways at the woman's red eyes. "No lemon," Victoria confirms, almost grateful to not have to decide anything else. Daniel pulls himself together. "Thanks," he says, not looking at Mariana. There's gratitude in his voice, mixed with pride that keeps him from saying more. In the open kitchen, Mariana grabs a tall glass, clear ice, perfectly measured water. She returns with steady steps, offering it to Victoria like a moment of pause. "Breathing is also discipline," she murmurs, not to intrude, but not willing to let pain go unseen. Victoria looks at her for a second longer. "I'll remember that." Daniel opens a drawer, looking for something that isn't there, just to keep his hands busy. "We have the Institute dinner tomorrow," he says, getting back on topic. "I need you there." "Strong? Strong?" Victoria repeats quietly, like testing the weight of the word in her mouth. "I can be strong. Just don't ask me to be perfect." "Perfection doesn't exist," Mariana says, almost inaudibly, wiping a non-existent watermark on the quartz. "But courage. Courage can be practiced." The phrase lands between them with the gentleness of a tissue and the impact of truth. Daniel looks up at Mariana. Finally. A flicker of curiosity. Who is this woman who cleans corners and also clears dust from people's hearts? "What's your name?" Victoria asks, drying the last shimmer of a tear. "Mariana," she replies, with a restrained smile that holds both respect and warmth. "If you need anything, I'll be nearby." Victoria breathes in. "Thank you, Mariana. Really?" As Mariana walks away, carrying the bucket and cloth, the city sounds return. Distant sirens, the whispering wind on the terraces, the soft hum of the AC. Beneath the uniform, her chest feels heavy. She saw Victoria's vulnerability reveal itself with the honesty of someone who's bled inside. She also saw Daniel's exhaustion, the armor of the son she raised to survive in a world that never stops demanding. What she discovered there, that Victoria's fragility isn't drama, it's survival, starts to shift something inside her. Maybe the proof she came looking for isn't so simple. Maybe there's no obvious villain. In the dark mirror of the window, Mariana sees her own image behind Victoria's reflection, slightly out of focus, as if two versions of herself are staring at each other, the mother who protects and the woman who judges. She straightens her shoulders. The game began with no applause and no audience, but the first truth has already come out. And truths, she knows, don't go back in the drawer. Dawn filters through the linen curtains. The first city noises reach the penthouse. A distant helicopter, delivery trucks, the whisper of traffic. In the open kitchen, Brushed steel reflects the beginning of what promises to be a long day. The Institute's charity dinner is tonight, and the florists are already measuring the entryway, arranging white tulips in tall vases. The apartment feels like a mini film production. Mariana adjusts her uniform, short natural hair neatly styled, apron without a single crease. Her calm face reveals years of self-control. She gathers cups, tidies the counter, listens to the silence after the previous night's argument, like someone catching the final vibration of a piano key. Victoria appears in the hallway wearing a light sweatshirt and leggings, her face makeup-free, showing faint under-eye circles. The modern haircut doesn't take away the delicacy of her expression. Her blue eyes, though, carry the shine of a sleepless night. "Did you manage to sleep?" Mariana asks gently as she turns on the kettle. "Hardly at all," Victoria admits, leaning against the quartz countertop. Today, the Institute is announcing the new wing of the education program. There'll be cameras, donors, an endless list of handshakes, and I have to smile. I can make chamomile tea with honey. It helps warm you from the inside. Thank you. And Mariana, stay close to me today. I know it's strange to ask, but when you're around, I can breathe better. Mariana tilts her head in a gesture of understanding. I'll stay close. In the early evening, the hotel ballroom in Beverly Hills glows with amber light. Circular chandeliers, spotless tablecloths, a string quartet doing sound check. Photographers test their flashes. Guests arrive in flowing dresses and perfectly tailored tuxedos. Victoria appears transformed. A navy blue dress that hugs her waist. Blonde hair tucked behind her left ear with a small diamond earring. The makeup highlights her eyes without stealing their softness. Still, her cold hands give away the tension she's trying to hide. The press officer, a brisk walking woman with a clipboard in hand, intercepts her near the backstage. "Change of plan," she announces without drama. The main patron is late, and the guest speaker missed her flight. "We need you to give a 3-minute speech before the institutional video." Victoria pales a shade. "Me? I wasn't on the script to speak." It's simple. Thank the donors, mention the goal, and invite the audience to watch the video. 3 minutes. 3 minutes can feel like forever when your throat closes up, whispers Victoria, more to herself than to the aide. Mariana, quietly moving between servers, notices the shallow breathing, the moist shine in Victoria's eyes. Without a word, she positions herself between Victoria and the backstage curtain, offering a linen napkin as if offering her presence. Let's take a breath. There's a quiet service hallway just to the side. Victoria hesitates, then gives a small nod. In the hallway, the sound of the ballroom is muffled. A faint scent of floor wax and fresh coffee fills the narrow space. Mariana gestures toward the wall. "Lean your back here, please. Feel the ground." Victoria obeys, trying to steady her trembling hands. "Look at me," Mariana says, firm and kind. "Let's count like this. 4 to inhale, 4 to hold, 4 to exhale, 4 to pause. Ready. Ready." Victoria tries to smile, but the smile fades with the first count. Mariana leads, marking the rhythm with her fingers in the air. 4 in, hold, 4 out. Pause. After 2 rounds, color returns to Victoria's face. Her jaw relaxes slightly. "You've done hard things before," Mariana says, her voice a calm, steady trail. "Nobody needs perfection. They just need to hear what's real." "And what's real, Mariana?" Victoria stares at the floor, tears threatening again. "That I always feel like I owe something. That I'm afraid of disappointing people. That sometimes I think they only put up with me because I look good in pictures. What's real is that you're here because you believe," Mariana replies. clear, direct. And believing hurts sometimes, but you're standing. That speaks louder than any speech. The aide appears at the hallway door, anxious. 2 minutes. Victoria breathes, dabs the corner of her eye with her fingertip. Mariana, would you stay behind the curtain? Just so I know you're there. I'll be there. The master of ceremonies calls her name. The stage lights catch the blue dress and light up the ballroom with anticipation. Victoria steps forward. Then again, the microphone waits. For a second, the air feels thin. Then she finds, just behind the curtain, Mariana's outline. Shoulders upright, hands clasped, a quiet presence like a lighthouse. "Good evening," Victoria says, and even she's surprised by her own voice. It's steady. "Thank you for being here, for believing that education changes destiny. Today I won't talk about numbers. I want to talk about a boy I met in South LA who told me he had never been inside a library. When he opened his first book, it was like a window opened inside him. That's the window you help keep open." The room goes quiet. The string quartet, though silent, seems to listen. The words find clarity, as if Victoria is discovering them as she speaks. Sometimes, the world demands a perfect image from us. I don't have that to give today. What I do have is gratitude. And the commitment to learn with all of you how to make this project stand the test of time. A brief, measured pause. Thank you. Now, I invite you to see the story we're building together. The video begins. The audience applauds warmly. Backstage, Victoria lets out a nervous laugh, almost in disbelief. "I did it." "You did," says Mariana, holding out a glass of water like it's a medal, and beautifully. Victoria drinks half in one go. When she lowers the glass, the social mask slips for good. "There's something I can't tell anyone," she confesses, voice unguarded. "Not even my family. Not Daniel. Not the right way." Mariana doesn't pull away. "You can tell me." "A year ago, I got a diagnosis. The doctor said I might not be able to get pregnant. Might." That word turned into a ghost. Victoria closes her eyes, gripping the back of a chair. And since then, every dinner, every comment about the future heir, every evaluating glance, it all cuts me. I want to be stronger. But sometimes I break inside. Mariana feels the world shift under her feet. The mother in her wants to embrace, to reveal the truth, to promise protection. But the disguise is the boundary she chose. What she can offer now is care. "Breaking inside isn't the end," she says softly. "It's the place where many people begin again. What you did on that stage today, that was a new beginning." Victoria opens her tear-filled eyes and rests her forehead on Mariana's shoulder for a second. Small, intimate. "Thank you for not leaving me alone." A notification interrupts the moment. Victoria's phone vibrates in her purse. She reads it and pales again. Mariana watches without pressing, but the shock is impossible to hide. "What is it?" "It's from the communications department," Victoria whispers. "A journalist published a note saying he has an exclusive story about me. Says it'll be out early tomorrow." "Do you know what it's about?" "Not exactly, but it could be about the treatment I did. If that leaks, they'll call me everything. They'll say I'm a burden to the family." Beyond the curtain, the video ends. The room stirs. Daniel rushes into the backstage area, still in a perfect tie, but urgency on his face. "Victoria, but we need to talk now. The board chairman wants an announcement tonight. They want to signal family stability to the donors." Victoria looks at her husband, torn between relief to see him and fear of being swallowed by yet another impossible demand. Mariana takes half a step back, but her eyes have already decided she won't let that young woman cross this storm alone. "What announcement? Daniel?" Victoria asks, her voice steady with a courage newly found. Daniel takes a deep breath, avoiding Mariana's gaze, still seeing her as just a quiet staff member. He chooses his words, but time's up for half-truths. They want us to speak publicly about family plans. The silence is as heavy as a sentence. The service corridor feels smaller. Victoria's breath slices through the air, but this time it doesn't fall apart. It's a blade. Mariana lifts her chin, invisible yet present. Inside her, something shifted. The vigilant mother has awakened. The service corridor still held the echo of Daniel's last words, as if the narrow walls wanted to trap the weight of them. Family plans. Victoria, pale, stood frozen, breath broken into pieces. Mariana behind the curtain, silently swallowed the urge to protect her in that moment. It wasn't the time to reveal herself, but it was time to watch and to remember. Hours later, after the dinner had ended and the guests said their formal goodbyes, Mariana walked through the quiet apartment. The piano sat silent, and the city beyond the balcony was just a sea of distant lights. It was in this setting that Daniel entered, loosening his tie, his expression heavy. He didn't immediately notice the presence of his mother in disguise. Mariana, moving with measured steps, was closing a vase of dried flowers, like just another shadow in the house. "Daniel," she said firmly, and the sound of his own name made him lift his eyes. "We need to talk." He frowned, surprised by her tone. "Not now, please. I've had enough for one day." "That's exactly why it has to be now," Mariana replied, stepping closer. Her gaze, though softened by the humility of the uniform, carried the same authority he had known since childhood. "Do you think no one noticed the way you spoke to Victoria? Do you think I didn't see how she left that room afraid she'd be crushed?" Daniel took a deep breath, leaning his hands on the back of a chair. "You don't understand, Mariana. Everything that's at stake. I carry this company, this name. People expect perfection, stability. And when she hesitates, when she shows weakness, all eyes turn to me. I'm judged for what she can't bear." Mariana narrowed her eyes. "So that's it. The woman you chose to love is now just another piece in the game of your image. What happened to the Daniel I raised to be more than numbers and expectations?" He turned around, his voice hardened, but vulnerability leaked between the lines. "You don't know what it's like. Mom, you can't imagine the pressure. Ever since Dad was gone, everything's been on my shoulders. And I didn't ask her to come into this world if she wasn't ready to handle it." Mariana took a step forward, her voice deep. "Watch your words, Daniel. Because what I just heard isn't from a man who protects his wife, but from someone who turns her into the enemy inside her own home. You're putting the same weight on her that the board of shareholders puts on you. But she's not a shareholder. She's your wife." He closed his eyes, as if each sentence was a stone thrown at his defenses. And what if she can't handle it? What if one day she leaves because she can't take it anymore? Mariana took a deep breath and moved closer until she could see in his eyes the little boy she once held by the hand. Then maybe the problem isn't what she can handle, but what you chose to demand. Love is not a business contract, Daniel. Love is not a performance for the public. The silence stretched, heavy. Daniel tried to hold her gaze, but faltered. His voice, when it came, was choked. You don't know the worst part. Some nights I wish everything would collapse, that the company would burn, that the headlines would forget me, just so I could breathe like an ordinary man. But then I remember I carry your sacrifice, everything you built, and I hate myself for thinking that. Mariana felt her heart tighten. The revelation was crueler than she'd expected. Standing there wasn't just a demanding son, but a man crushed under his own weight. Still, she raised her head, unyielding. You don't get to hide behind my story to justify your cowardice. I fought so you would have choices, not to see you trapped in golden chains. If you lose Victoria because you didn't know how to take care of her, that guilt will be yours, and no fortune will make up for that loss. Daniel breathed, trembling slightly, and let it slip. What if I'm already losing her? The question hung in the air, sharp. Mariana took half a step back, her eyes glistening but her posture intact. The first crack between mother and son opened right there, in the quiet living room, and nothing would ever be the same again. The silence that lingered after Daniel's confession still echoed in Mariana's mind as preparations for the family's next big event took shape. 1 week later, the ballroom of one of Los Angeles' most exclusive clubs sparkled under crystal chandeliers, flawless tables, arrangements of white and gold roses, guests in elegant gowns and gleaming tuxedos. It was the night the Collins family would present a new company expansion project to investors and philanthropists. Mariana walked among the guests, once again in uniform, tray in hand, eyes alert. The disguise gave her access to secrets, but also exposed her to a wound, watching her son perform perfection in front of everyone while falling apart inside. Victoria, meanwhile, wore a polite smile, but her nervous hands revealed the weight of sustaining a fragile image. In the middle of the ballroom, a silver-haired woman, a longtime family friend, commented aloud, "She's beautiful. But can she handle the pressure of being a Collins? This sort of thing always ends badly." The comment cut through the air like a blade. Mariana, only a few steps away, felt her blood boil. She looked at Victoria and saw the unshed tear, her chin lifted by pride alone. In that instant, something inside her snapped. She couldn't watch in silence any longer. The entire ballroom seemed to move in slow motion, and Mariana felt the decision rise within her like a storm. She walked toward Victoria, discreetly placing the tray on a side table. "Victoria," she called, her voice full of firmness and tenderness. The young woman turned, surprised to see the maid approaching in the middle of the crowd. "Mariana, is everything okay?" Mariana's breath quickened, but her posture remained steady. She looked around, meeting every curious stare, every whisper that spread. Then, with her heart racing, she said, "You need to know who I really am." The room fell silent. The musicians, in the corner, let the sound of the violins die in the air. Daniel, speaking with a nearby investor, suddenly stopped and stared at the scene. Mariana removed her apron, folding it calmly, as if closing a chapter. Her voice rang out clearly. "My name is Mariana Collins. I'm not just a staff member in this house. I am Daniel's mother." The shock was immediate. A buzz of murmurs grew among the guests. Victoria raised a hand to her mouth, her blue eyes welling up. "Mom!" The word came out in a disbelieving whisper. Daniel stepped forward, his face flushed with tension. "Mom, what are you doing? This is not the time." But Mariana didn't back down. There's no perfect time for the truth. Daniel, I couldn't keep watching this farce. You deserve to know, Victoria, that I wasn't just cleaning the corners of this house. I was clearing the doubts in my heart, trying to understand who you truly are. Victoria staggered a step back, holding onto a chair. You were near me this whole time? Listening to my pain, my confessions? Yes, Mariana replied, her voice thick with emotion. And with every word I heard, I realized the woman my son chose isn't weak, as many claim. You are strong, Victoria, because you're still standing, despite everything. The whole room watched, as if witnessing a scene impossible to ignore. Some whispered in shock, others in admiration. Victoria wiped away a tear that insisted on falling. You deceived me, Mariana. But at the same time, you were the only one who gave me strength when I was about to fall. Daniel stepped in, his tone heavy with frustration and fear. You exposed all of us, in front of investors, journalists. What do you think they'll say now? Mariana turned to him, steady as a wall. That truth exists in this family, that no matter how much you want to hide behind appearances, Daniel, nothing is stronger than the courage to reveal who we are. Victoria, still trembling, looked at Mariana as if seeing her for the first time. You did this for me. I did it for us, Mariana answered, her eyes shining. Because lies separate us, but the truth, no matter how hard, can bring us together. A deep silence took over the room. The family's fate hung in the balance, in front of everyone. Victoria closed her eyes for a moment, fighting through confusion and shock. When she opened them, her gaze had changed. Not the gaze of an insecure wife anymore, but of a woman who had just discovered she had an unexpected ally by her side. Mariana's public revelation still hung in the air like thunder refusing to fade. The ballroom had returned to its routine of music and toasts, but the atmosphere wasn't the same. Amid curious glances and hushed whispers, Victoria withdrew early. In the car ride home, she stayed silent, staring out the window at the city lights, as if each traffic signal reflected her inner confusion. In the middle of the night, already at the apartment, Victoria walked barefoot through the room, lit only by moonlight. Her blue dress still lay draped over the armchair, and her body seemed weighed down by memories and doubts. She sat at her vanity mirror, slowly removed her earrings, and when she saw her reflection, smudged makeup, red eyes, a weariness older than her age, she couldn't hold back the tears. Who am I really? She murmured to herself, resting her face in her hands. Am I the perfect wife they want? Or the woman who falls apart every time the door closes? At that moment, a soft knock at the door interrupted her silent monologue. Mariana entered cautiously, now dressed in simple clothes, no longer in disguise. Her eyes carried the strength of someone ready to face any consequence. She approached slowly, sat at the edge of the bed, and waited for Victoria to lift her eyes. You don't need to pretend with me, Mariana said in a low, almost motherly voice. Victoria took a deep breath, swallowing the lump in her throat. Since the day I joined this family, I've felt watched. Every gesture, every word, everything is judged, compared, criticized. I try to smile, try to be enough, but inside, I'm falling apart. Mariana took her hand, feeling the cold of her skin. Luxury can be a golden prison, my daughter. And I know those chains well, even coming from a different world. What you're feeling isn't weakness. It's humanity. Victoria let out a sob, her body curling as if finally allowing herself to break. But what if Daniel can't handle the truth about me? What if all he sees are my flaws? I'm afraid his love won't survive it. Love that can't survive the truth isn't love. Victoria. Mariana answered, firm but tender. You don't need to carry the weight of perfection alone. Anyone who truly loves you has to be willing to love all of you, including your scars. The young woman lowered her eyes and stayed silent for a long while. Then she stood, walked over to the glass window that overlooked the sleeping city. She gripped the curtain tightly, as if trying to rip something from inside herself. I can't keep living like this, she said, more to herself than to Mariana. I'm done hiding. If it means losing everything, so be it. But I won't silence my own voice anymore. Mariana stepped forward, placed a hand on her shoulder, and looked at her with pride. That's where your strength lives. In this decision, not in the image, not in the expectations, but in the moment you choose to live without masks. Victoria closed her eyes, feeling the weight of that choice. When she opened them again, there was a new light in her gaze, not the shimmer of fragility, but of courage about to burst. In the next room, Daniel arrived, quietly opening the door after finishing an emergency phone meeting. When he saw the two women together, he sensed something profound had changed. The heavy silence he walked into wasn't one of defeat, but of decision. Victoria turned to face him. Her voice, firm despite the fresh tears, cut through the air. Daniel, tomorrow you're going to hear from me everything I've been hiding until now. And after that, nothing will be the same. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. This family was about to cross a point of no return. The room still held the weight of Victoria's promise when Daniel closed the door behind him. His face was tense. His blue eyes carried sleepless nights. He looked at his wife for a moment, then quickly noticed Mariana standing firm by the window, her posture upright and gaze unshaken. So it's true, he said, breaking the silence. You introduced yourself in front of everyone as my mother, threw our family into a spectacle right in front of investors, journalists, and friends. Mariana took a deep breath. Silence was no longer an option. Daniel. She needed to know who I am. You needed to stop treating your life like a contract. If anything was exposed, it was only the truth you keep insisting on hiding. Daniel gave a bitter half-smile. Funny. Did you really think you were hiding? That I didn't notice from day one who the maid walking around my apartment really was. The words fell like a blade. Mariana went pale. You knew? He nodded slowly, approaching with calculated steps. Of course I knew. I let you stay. I let you get close to her. Because I wanted to see how far you would take your little game. I wanted to know if, deep down, you trusted me. Or if you still felt like you had to protect me like I was a helpless child. Victoria, caught between surprise and disbelief, raised her trembling voice. Daniel, are you saying you let your own mother live in disguise just to test her? Yes, he replied flatly. And not just her. I tested you too, Victoria. I wanted to see if, without titles or last names, you would still be the same person with someone you thought was just a maid. I needed proof. Mariana stepped forward, her voice filled with pain and outrage. You have no right to use people's love like it's some kind of experiment, Daniel. I put on that uniform to understand you, to protect what was left of your humanity. And now I find out I was just part of your theater. Daniel looked away for a second, but the mask quickly returned. Theater? No. Survival. You don't know how much this family is watched. The board, the investors, the press, they're all waiting for me to fail. If I fall, everyone falls with me. Victoria, tears in her eyes, lifted her chin. And us? Me? Your mother? Are we just pieces in your defense strategy? Daniel took a deep breath, but his voice trembled despite the cold front he tried to maintain. I needed certainty. Because every time I feel like I'm about to lose control, I think of my mother's sacrifice. I think of the weight of our name. And I wonder if you're really here for me, or for what I represent. Mariana stared at him, and her teary eyes no longer hid the wound. Then your doubt isn't about us, Daniel. It's about yourself. You never believed you were worthy of love without having to earn it, and that's why you destroy everything around you. The room fell into silence. Daniel held his head in his hands, pressing his temples. Maybe you're right. Maybe I'm so tied to the idea of carrying everything that I no longer know how to let go. Mariana stepped closer, her heart tight. My son, either you learn to trust the love you receive, or you'll end up alone, even surrounded by crowds. Victoria, now with tears freely running down her cheeks, added, and I won't be able to fight against you and the world at the same time. Either you make space for me, or you're going to lose me. Daniel closed his eyes, breathing heavily, his face contorted. The man who once seemed unbreakable was on the verge of collapse in front of the two women who meant the most to him. But when he opened his eyes again, there was a shadow of a decision that frightened them. Then, maybe I need to choose, before the world chooses for me. The impact of those words hung like a sentence. Neither Mariana nor Victoria knew if Daniel was about to surrender to love or sacrifice everything in the name of power. The tension from the night before still lingered like a shadow over the apartment. Daniel had secluded himself in the office, leaving Mariana and Victoria alone in the living room. The dim lighting reflected off the polished wooden floor, and the silence was so heavy it felt like it was screaming. Victoria paced back and forth, hugging herself as if trying to find shelter in her own body. He doesn't understand, she said, voice choked. Daniel only sees expectations, obligations, numbers. But he doesn't see how much I'm bleeding inside. Mariana watched her, each of the young woman's expressions reminding her of herself years ago, when she too had felt the crushing weight of the world on her shoulders. Her voice came out firm but soft. You're not alone in this pain. I know exactly what it's like to carry sorrow in silence. Victoria stopped, surprised, staring at her. You always seem so strong, so unshakable. How could you possibly understand what I'm going through? Mariana took a deep breath, walking to the window, where the city sparkled with its indifference. Her dark eyes reflected the lights of Los Angeles, but her gaze was turned inward, to the scars that had never truly healed. I grew up in a home where nothing was left over. My mother cleaned houses to feed 6 children, and I learned early that sometimes dignity is the only thing we have to hold on to. I married young to Daniel's father, and I thought love would be enough. But I quickly learned that life demands more than we can give. Her hands trembled slightly as she clasped them together. I washed clothes at dawn, hid my tears so I wouldn't scare my son, and learned to smile when everything inside me was screaming. And when my husband finally passed away, I was alone, carrying the weight of raising an heir with no money, no support, and a world that said I wouldn't make it. Victoria stepped closer, eyes full of tears. Mariana, I had no idea, and you couldn't have known, she continued, letting the emotion leak into her voice. Because I hid it. I wore the armor of strength, but inside I was made of broken pieces. That's how I survived. And today, looking at you, I see the same look I once had in my eyes. The look of someone who's tired of pretending to be whole. Victoria couldn't hold back. She let the tears fall and collapsed to her knees in front of the armchair, covering her face with her hands. I'm not enough, Mariana. I'm not the perfect wife. I'm not the woman they expect me to be. Inside me, there's a void that terrifies me. Mariana knelt in front of her, holding her face tenderly. Listen to me, Victoria. You don't need to be perfect. I fought my whole life for my son to have someone who could love him truly, and now I see that person is right here. What you need is to accept that your scars don't make you weak. They are proof that you survived. Victoria cried, but for the first time there was something different in her tears. Not just pain, but release. She rested her forehead against Mariana's, and they stayed like that, breathing together. 2 generations of women who finally saw each other for who they really were. I'm afraid of losing everything, Victoria whispered. And I'm afraid of losing you, Mariana replied, steady. Because if you give up, my fight will have been in vain. But if you choose to rise, not just for Danielle, but for yourself, then you'll discover a strength you never imagined you had. The clock in the living room struck midnight, breaking the silence. They embraced tightly, and in that moment, they were no longer just mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. They were 2 unmasked women, united by a pain that made them equals. And as the hug tightened, Mariana realized that for the first time, Victoria wasn't just an insecure figure trying to fit in. She was ready to face her own destiny, even if it meant confronting the man she loved. The clock was still striking midnight when Daniel's phone vibrated in the office. He had isolated himself since the revelation at the dinner, but the call coming through wasn't ordinary. The name on the screen made him go pale. It was one of the company's oldest board members, someone the board deeply trusted. He answered with a tense voice, "Speak." On the other end, the news came like a dagger. "Daniel, we need you to come to headquarters first thing tomorrow morning. We've discovered that confidential documents have been leaked to your biggest competitor. Information about the expansion projects and international contracts is already circulating in the market, and it wasn't an external attack. It came from inside." Daniel stood abruptly, knocking over a pile of papers on his desk. "What do you mean, from inside? Who would even have access to that level of information?" The answer came slowly, heavy. "Your cousin, Anthony." He gave everything away in exchange for a stake in the rival company. And from what we know, he's already signed a preliminary agreement. The call ended, but the silence that followed was deafening. Daniel felt his legs weaken. Betrayal by blood. It wasn't an enemy from outside, but someone from his own family, carrying the same last name. In the next room, Mariana and Victoria heard the sound of the chair scraping the floor and rushed to the office. They found Daniel standing, hands on the desk, his face tight with tension. "Daniel, what happened?" Mariana asked, her heart pounding. He took a while to answer, as if each word was painful to get out. "Anthony, my own cousin, sold the soul of this family. He gave everything to the rival." Victoria placed a hand over her heart, stunned. "That means the company." Daniel interrupted, his voice choked with anger and pain. "It means we're about to lose everything. Not just contracts, but credibility, the respect of the board, the legacy my father built. They want to destroy us from the inside out. And now they have the ammunition to do it." Mariana closed her eyes for a moment, feeling a familiar weight in her chest. I knew the greatest danger wouldn't come from strangers, but from someone who knew our weaknesses. It's always been that way. It's always that way. Daniel slammed his palm on the desk, the sound echoing through the office. I gave him everything, treated him like a brother when no one else believed in him, and now he stabs me in the back. Victoria stepped closer, gently touching his arm. Daniel, you can't face this alone, not now. That's exactly what they want, for you to fall apart. He looked at her, his blue eyes glistening. For the first time, he let the pain show. And what if it's too late, Victoria? What if, deep down, I've already lost? Mariana stood, her voice firm but full of emotion. It's not too late. What Anthony stole were papers, numbers, but what holds this family together is more than that. If you stand together now, if you trust each other, you'll make it through. But if you stay divided, then he's already won. Silence fell over the three of them, heavy as steel. Daniel's gaze shifted between his mother and his wife, torn between anger over the betrayal and the fear of losing everything. Then his phone vibrated again, a short message on the screen. He read it aloud, his tone dark. The board calls for an emergency meeting tomorrow. Agenda: removal from the presidency. Victoria felt her body tremble, and Mariana clenched her fists. The war that once seemed merely personal had now become a public battle. And deep in their hearts, they all knew. From this point on, nothing would be just about business. It was about the survival of the family itself. The night passed quickly. The sun had barely risen over the horizon when Mariana, Victoria, and Daniel met in the apartment's main living room. The tension of the emergency meeting loomed over them, but something had changed. They were no longer just three wounded people trying to survive. They were a family that had to decide whether to face it together or allow themselves to be destroyed. Daniel wore a flawless dark suit, but the deep circles under his eyes revealed his sleepless night. Mariana stood strong, her face serious, exuding the quiet authority of someone who had lived through worse battles. Victoria, despite her exhaustion, had something new in her eyes: courage. Mariana broke the silence. Daniel, this war isn't just yours. If you walk into that room alone, they'll crush you. But if you walk in with the truth and with our strength, you can turn the game around. Victoria stepped closer, touching her husband's arm. It's time to show them that you're not just a CEO. You're a man with a family, with love, with reasons beyond power to fight. Let them see that. Let them see the truth. He looked at both of them, and for a moment, his usual coldness faded. I don't know if I can. I spent years building an image of perfection. Showing weakness to the board might be the final nail in the coffin. Mariana lifted her chin. It's not weakness, it's humanity. They already have the numbers Anthony gave them. If you want to win, you need to show what he could never steal: this family's soul. Shortly after meet, the three of them entered the boardroom. The environment was luxurious and cold, with a large oval table surrounded by directors with stern expressions. Anthony sat at the far end, his look filled with false calm. One of the board members opened the meeting with a cutting voice. Daniel Collins, there is evidence that confidential information was leaked. Your leadership is in question. This assembly will decide whether you remain as president. Everyone waited for a response. Daniel took a deep breath, ready to rise, but Mariana stepped forward first, surprising everyone. Before you judge my son, you need to hear from me. All eyes turned to her. Mariana stood tall, not in designer clothes, but with the dignity she carried in her gaze. I watched my son grow up surrounded by pain and responsibility. I saw this name built with blood and sacrifice. Anthony may have handed over documents, but the true legacy of this family is not in folders, contracts, or numbers. It's here, in this man who learned to fight the impossible. Victoria then stood beside her, breaking protocol for good. And I'm here to confirm it. Yes, we've made mistakes as a family. Yes, I've personally faltered. But no company survives without the foundation of love and trust. And that's what we're rebuilding. If you remove Daniel today, you're not just taking away a president. You're destroying the one thing still keeping this company alive. The unity of a family that never gave up. A murmur rippled through the room. Anthony stood, visibly irritated. This is a cheap performance. We're talking business here, not emotions. Mariana looked at him, her eyes burning with indignation. And that's exactly why you'll never be worthy of this name. Business can be cold, Anthony. But without values, it's just dust. Daniel finally stood. His voice echoed through the room, firm and full of emotion. I won't hide who I am anymore. If you want to remove me, do it. But know this last name isn't just a corporate title. It's the story of a mother who never gave up, a wife who learned to fight, and a man who is ready to be real. If you're going to judge me today, let it be for my courage, not my fear. Silence took over. Some board members looked down, others exchanged glances. For the first time, Anthony looked unsure. When the vote was called, the hands went up, one by one. The result was unexpected. Daniel would remain. Not because he was flawless, but because, that morning, he showed more humanity than anyone expected. Back at the apartment, the family embraced. Daniel, voice breaking, said, I thought I had to carry everything alone. But you showed me that I'm only truly strong when I'm not alone. Victoria squeezed his hand. And I only found out who I was because you let me fall, and then helped me rise. Mariana smiled, proud but also relieved. This is the real fresh start, not for the company, for us. But deep down, they all knew the enemy defeated that day might return stronger. And Anthony's shadow still lingered, waiting for the next move. The return from the meeting brought a sense of relief that had seemed impossible just hours earlier. Daniel's presidency was intact, the family name preserved, but their hearts still ached from the tension of the past days. In the apartment, late into the night, the softly lit living room became the setting for the final scene of a story that had begun with lies and disguises, but now needed to end with truth and vulnerability. Victoria paced, her eyes watery, but this time not from fear, but from a decision growing inside her. Mariana, sitting on the couch, watched silently, recognizing in her the same fight she once had to face. Daniel, standing by the window, still seemed to carry the weight of the world. It was Victoria who broke the silence. Daniel. I've carried the shame of not being enough, but today, in front of everyone, I realized I don't need to prove anything to the world anymore. I just need to prove to myself that I have courage. Daniel turned, confused. What are you saying? She took a deep breath, stepping closer. I'm saying I want to give up part of my inheritance. I'm going to invest my name and my personal assets to strengthen the company. But on one condition, I want the new family foundation to be named after Mariana. Not as a maid in disguise, not just as your mother, but as the woman who held all of this together with her own hands. Mariana's eyes widened, surprised. Victoria, no. That's not necessary. What matters is that you two found each other again, not my name on a plaque." Victoria smiled through her tears. "It is necessary. Because you saved me when I was about to lose myself. I want the world to know that we're not just a business family, but one that honors its roots." Daniel, moved, let out a heavy sigh. "Victoria, this is a huge gesture. Are you really willing to sacrifice this much?" "It's not a sacrifice," she replied firmly. "It's love. And I finally understand that love isn't about keeping up appearances. It's about building something together, even when it hurts." Mariana stood, her eyes full of tears, and took her daughter-in-law's hands. "You have no idea how much this means to me. I spent my life believing only my silence could protect you. Now I see that my voice matters too. Thank you for giving me back something I thought I'd lost forever. My dignity." Daniel stepped closer to them and, for the first time in a long time, let the tears fall freely. "I failed to trust, failed to see the love you both had for me. But if I have the chance to start over today, it's because you never gave up on me." They embraced, and in that moment, there were no more masks, no titles, no inheritance, only 3 lives bound together by pain and courage. The next day, in an unexpected press conference, Daniel announced the creation of the Mariana Collins Foundation, dedicated to supporting women in vulnerable situations. The camera flashes lit up the family's faces, but what truly shined was the conviction that their real legacy wasn't in money, but in the courage to love. At the end, Mariana, with a firm voice, declared before the reporters, "Let the world know, our greatest wealth isn't what we keep, but what we have the courage to give." And at that moment, the world didn't just see a powerful family from Los Angeles. It saw a story of downfall, betrayal, but also forgiveness and resilience. A story where the final lesson wasn't found in protected contracts, but in an act of generosity that turned pain into hope. And so, we reach the end of this powerful story, marked by pain, hard choices, and above all, resilience. Now I want to hear from you. What did you think of this story? Leave a comment with your rating from 0 to 10 and tell me how much this story moved you. If you liked it, like the video, share it with someone who'll be touched too, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next stories. And before you go, I've picked another story even more emotional, one I'm sure will touch your heart in a deep way. Don't miss it.